Prigozhin says his private army had seized control of Russian military facilities in two critical cities, Rostov-on-Don, that's about 700 miles south of Moscow, and the city of Voronezh, about the halfway point on the road to Moscow. President Putin called the actions by Prigozhin a betrayal and a stab in the back to the Russian people, and warned those who follow Prigozhin will pay a price. Christian, both confusing, complex, all of this is just a toss-up in the air.
Yeah,
amazing.
And actually, General Spider Marks reminded me of Churchill's, long time ago description of Russia as a riddle wrapped up in in an enigma and all the rest of it. In other words, you just don't know until you know. So it looks like Prigozhin was trying to send a message to the Ministry of Defense and to the head of the Russian armed forces. Those people have been his target since the beginning of this war, and he has complained bitterly that they...
Bro, this is like, it's absolute fucking madness. Like, what happened is so insane, and I can't even wrap my head around it. I've been thinking about it a lot, okay? And I don't know how it happened, why it happened. I think everyone that says they get it are coping. One of the funniest aspects of this has been that all the pro-Russia guys who were like going crazy over it, and Vladimir Putin basically saying like Vladimir Putin's message was insane. It just made zero sense. Here's what it is, okay? Ukrainian counteroffensive starts. Wagner, the PMCs, the private military contractors that are like famous for torturing motherfuckers with like sledgehammers and just being overall brutal and being Nazis for the most part, are in a forward position that gets bombed. Okay, this is the mainstream narrative, and the guy who is leading the Wagner group is a caterer who. A caterer turned warlord, basically. I mean, these guys operate in fucking Africa. They operate in Syria. Like, they're mercs, right? And the caterer, Prigozhin, has been very critical of the MOD, not Putin himself, because he's friendly with Putin, but he believes that the Putin's commanders have been like misleading him, right? He's complaining that he's not getting enough supplies. He's complaining that they're being left out to dry. So he turned around and said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going back into Russia, and I'm not stopping until I fucking reach Moscow. Okay? That's it. And everyone was like, what? There's no way. He's not going to do that. Oh, no, he actually did. He took like a 50-kilometer convoy of like military weapons and drove it back into fucking Russia from the south. First, they overtook Rostov-on-Don, which is like the southern military post where a lot of the officers and the generals are, where they're basically, it's like the tip of the... Well, it's not the tip of the spear necessarily, but it's where it's the closest point to Ukraine where all of the Russian commanders are, okay? Yeah, it's like the equivalent of San Diego. Sure, that's a good take. And they turned their fucking convoy around and went over and took down the military command center in Rostov-on-Don. With and all the soldiers that were in the city gave up. It's the rear detachment. Meanwhile, what was going on there? While that was happening, the Russian forces have not stopped bombing Ukraine. So, like, the war kept going on in Ukraine. It was just that the Wagner group was like, nah, fuck that. Like, we're coming to Moscow. Putin has been misled by his generals. We need to do some restructuring. It's absolute bullshit. And meanwhile, while that's going on, okay, all the liberals who are like, these Wagner guys are fucking gross, perverted Nazis, okay, we're like, oh, how sick. Which I get. It is kind of funny when you have like your own private mercenaries turn on you and in the middle of a fucking active war, okay? And it's very odd. But it was also odd seeing like liberals be like, you know, the guy that's even more right-wing than Vladimir Putin? That's my guy now. Like, they were having a mid-off, a race to the bottom, and liberals were just like, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah, Wagner. Keep popping off. No one said that. Yes, they did. What are you talking about? Were you not on Twitter? So originally, Prigozhin was, stating that he's like not an enemy of Putin, He's actually pro-Putin. He just hates the MOD and he needs to restructure it because they're lying to Putin. They're taking advantage of Putin, blah, 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 right? And then he decided, no, we're actually going to keep going to Moscow. And Vladimir Putin basically called him treasonous and said that the leadership last night, or at least last night my time, said that the leadership of Wagner were engaging in high treason, but the soldiers in the other mercs that were just following orders, they can defect and they won't be harmed, but the top leadership will get some of the worst punishments, okay? Putin never directly called him a traitor, didn't even mention his name in the TV speech. He said leadership of this group engaging in the act of treason were engaging in high treason, but not necessarily the soldiers themselves. Everyone understands who he was talking about. Okay? Anyway, let's watch this.
They have completely messed up and literally botched the invasion and the war in Ukraine, and that he has presented himself and his independent paramilitary force as the Russian saviors, if you like. And pretty much they are the only ones who...
Oh yeah, all the pro-Russia Patsock Andes must have lost their shit when Putin said this was comparable to 1917 law, as in 1917 was bad. Yeah. Putin came out as big-time czarist. That was cool. Don't know where that came from. That just like literally came from nowhere. What happened to all the fucking MAGA communists that are like patriotic socialists and shit? Are they also, are they no longer committed to international socialism? Is that what's going on? Anyway, I keep seeing people link is election tampering in the Wagner group, but also supporting
who have scored
them.
any, even though they might be minute, actual battlefield victories. And so it appears that he has now been pressured by Putin, who got Alexander Lukashenko, his big ally in Belarus, to engineer some kind of about-face. And according to Prigozhin, that is what has happened. We're waiting to be able to broadcast his latest audio to explain to everybody exactly what he thinks he's doing next. And we've got full coverage on this breaking story. We have CNN Chief International Security Correspondent Nick Payton-Walsh, National Security Reporter Natasha Bertrand, and the former CIA Chief of Russia Operations and CNN National Security Analyst Steve Hall. So, Nick, we were on together as this breaking news came of this latest intervention by Prigozhin and his latest Telegram audio message. He having taken a very significant military headquarters in the last 24 hours. Do we think now the Prigozhin threat is over?
No, I think it would be premature to suggest that. And indeed, he says the only reason he's turning around his columns on the way to Moscow, having, he says, got 200 kilometers within the city outskirts, is to stop bloodshed. He doesn't make a reference to a negotiation with the president of Belarus. That's done by the Belarusian president's own staff, suggesting that, in fact, Lukashenko intervened after speaking to Putin, and some sort of deal appears to have been hatched. But I don't think we know the entirety of it. It may be that there are going to be significant changes at the head of Russia's Ministry of Defense, but even if the ultimate targets of Prigozhin's march on Moscow end up being removed from their jobs, and that's the Defense Minister Shoigu, the head of the Ukrainian campaign, Gerasimov, and Chief of Staff, still, he's really crossed the Rubicon here, frankly, taking control of Rostov, moving through Voronezh, blockades put into Lipetsk, and putting that kind of military pressure on Putin, causing Putin to make that very stern speech today. It's quite clear that, to me, it will be hard to suddenly put the clock back and have Prigozhin a valued member of the Russian military establishment. So I think there are more details to come from this. I'm sure there are some who will say it's smart of Prigozhin not to send a relatively small column of Wagner forces into the massive million-strong metropolis of Moscow, where they're bound to, frankly, get lost amongst police forces trying to control such a vast area. But it is fair to look at the last 24 hours as a time which has significantly weakened Vladimir Putin, and I don't think we fully know the entirety of how that's played out. Startling to see this, and a remarkable moment of Prigozhin suddenly, it seems, deciding to de-escalate. But he is vague about where his columns will be. In field camps, he says, they'll go after they've turned round. That could mean on the way to Moscow. It could mean all the way back in Rostov or even in Ukraine. That's, I think, for him to elaborate upon. But startling, too, to see the Belarusian president, Alexander Lukashenko, a man who Putin is often used as sort of a subordinate to be ordered around, to sort of intervene, it seems, at this last moment, and really save Putin from the potential of some sort of armed insurrection. So I think a lot more information we need to learn about this, but the threat for now lessened, but we still just don't know, frankly, what got us to this moment.
And indeed, Natasha, let's go to you because, you know, obviously the White House, the president, his NATO allies, G7 allies, they also were caught somewhat off guard. They also thought that this was a very serious challenge and potentially showing the fragility of the Putin regime. What are we hearing more now about the president, you know, the military in the United States, heads of the military? What are they doing and thinking right now?
Yeah, Christian. Well, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, he was scheduled to take a trip to the Middle East this weekend to Israel and Jordan, and that trip has now been canceled so that he can stay in Washington to monitor the developments unfolding in Russia and, of course, brief President Biden. The same thing really with the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. He was supposed to go to Denmark this weekend for a conference. He instead participated virtually and will be going to Camp David with President Biden to monitor all of these very fast-moving developments coming out of Russia. So U.S. officials were clearly caught off guard by the speed with which this unfolded on Friday and really escalated into today. And of course, this further.
Call of Duty predicted this event? No. You know who fucking predicted the event? Not Call of Duty.
Good news first. The world's in great shape. We've got a civil war.
You know who predicted this event? Hideo fucking Kojima, baby. I mean, come on. Military sans frontières? Like, military without borders, dude? Come on. Fucking PMCs, dog.
War in Russia. Government loyalists against ultra-nationalist rebels. And 15,000 nukes at stake.
Just another day at the office.
Good news first. The world's in great shape. We've got a civil war in Russia. Government loyalists against ultra-nationalist rebels. And 15,000 nukes at stake.
Just saying. Prigozhin getting ratioed on Telegram? No fucking shot. What? Prigozhin got fucking ratioed on Telegram. Wagner is dissolving as we speak. Military sans frontières. Arigato Kojima-san. Thanks for bringing fantasy into reality. I mean, he's kind of the best. Check my last message about today's event summary. What is important to point out is that Prigozhin among Russian nationals has much bigger figure and respect than Putin does, but Wagner has just 25,000 ex-prisoners. There's no shot they will get any kind of success. Also, Prigozhin had big hopes for the support of Air Force General Surovikin, but it turned out he is not on Prigozhin's side. Everyone is on Putin's side, including Prigozhin. I still don't know what the reason for what this was, okay? I don't really know how this happened. I don't really know why this happened. I am a firm believer that, everything that happens in Russia is done with the prior go-ahead and knowledge of Vladimir Putin, no matter how insane it is. So that's it. Oh, you got the wrong one, but thank you. Did you get one only?
I got 3.
Oh, okay. There's no way a coup will happen in Russia. There's no way. See, there you go. I called it.
What?
There's no way a coup will happen. No, I'm kidding. I said that yesterday as a joke so that it will happen. But also, I wasn't really super on board with that either. Hasan sensing Erdogan vibes on this. I mean, there's no way Putin approved it. It makes him look insanely weak. There's now Russian civilians chanting Wagner and praising them. I mean, I don't know how much of that is what you've seen on fucking Twitter. I don't know. I legitimately have no fucking clue. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I get it. I don't think anyone understands it. I don't think Russian people understand it. I don't think a single person knows what the fuck's going on. No coup in Russia, not with Putin, not with the internet propaganda, not with the smooth brains that he said said the propaganda caused. What about conspiracy theories that this is all orchestrated to hide Russian troop movements? I don't know. It says Wagner is trending in Japan right there. I don't see it. Quite possible the U.S. intelligence community knew more about what Prigozhin was planning than the Kremlin. U.S. intelligence officials briefed congressional leaders known as a Gang of 8 in recent days on potentially concerning Wagner movements and equipment buildups near Russia. 2 people told me. It was unclear what was going to happen and when, however. Wagner shot down a bunch of Russian aircraft and killed some airmen, so I don't think it was a fake. Yeah, I mean, it feels like they, maybe Prigozhin isn't, maybe he isn't being dishonest. He literally is fucking annoyed with the MOD. Maybe that's why he wanted to do this. I don't know. CIA knows what Putin's having for breakfast before he does at this point. Yeah.
These further developments causing even greater whiplash. But we are told that U.S. intelligence actually did see signs that Prigozhin was perhaps preparing some kind of significant challenge to Russia's military leadership. And actually, intelligence officials briefed congressional leadership earlier this week on the...
Prigozhin is one of those guys who looks like an earthworm but has a beautiful family, Emhud says, which is this is just the most basic Russian. This is how every Russian family looks. Straight up. with the dude looking hurt as fuck, okay? And then like a beautiful wife and a beautiful child. Says you, what the fuck? This is just like my experience from growing up in Turkey, okay? Like, we would go to Antalya, and we would see this like a million times, okay? Just some hurt-looking, drunk motherfucker who's like hard to look at, okay? With a beautiful family. Anyway, the least depressed Slavic man. Yeah.
The potential that Prigozhin could make some kind of a dramatic move. Now, it wasn't clear when that would happen or what the ultimate aim of that would actually be. Would he try to march towards Moscow? Would he try to pose a challenge to the Russian president directly? Or would this simply be a confrontation with Russian military leadership? They didn't know, but what they did see were signs that Prigozhin was massing military equipment in concerning areas, that he was perhaps building up his forces near Russia. And so all of this contributed to a picture that was still a bit hazy around the edges, but that U.S. officials did see was cause for concern, Christian.
Natasha, thanks. Steve Hall, you have, studied this stuff with your intelligence hat as a CIA analyst for many, many years. So if you were to analyze right now, do you see this as a significant threat that Putin was able to sort of cleverly head off? Or that he's actually really in control and Prigozhin was throwing, his toys out of the pram again, like he did on Armistice Day, threatening to do this, that, and the other, until he didn't, and he stayed in Ukraine with his forces. What do you think is going on?
Well, Christiane, I wish I could say that I had been an analyst, but unfortunately I was an ops officer, but I'll give it a shot anyway. I don't think this is not over by any way, shape, or form. I don't think we're going to wake up either tomorrow morning or Monday morning and say, wow, that was interesting, I'm glad it's over. There is little doubt in my mind that Prigozhin must have done some significant planning before he started his activities. So he didn't just wake up this morning and say, how about we do this, or even a week or a month ago. He has to have some of the Siloviki, some of the most senior Putin guys, at least aware.
Is this just going to be a repeat of the coup in China last year that ended up being nothing but Western dreaming? Dude, no. Okay? This was very real. Let's not, make no mistake, okay? I always tell you when, Western media is, hyping some shit up, but this wasn't nothing. This was still a very serious thing. In my opinion, the least impactful reason for why it happened was, maybe money, or what he's literally fucking complaining about, which is more funds for the Wagner soldiers and replenishing their munitions and whatnot. Or the most impactful reason why it could have happened, this is again speculative, is because he legitimately is either getting paid by the CIA or wants to overtake. Wants to actually take over the MOD in its entirety, or even, take down Vladimir Putin or something. So it was definitely an attempted coup. I don't think it was bullshit. People say China is going to fall apart tomorrow every fucking day. It's entirely different than that. This was a real thing. Sure, maybe people were, no, it wasn't Hasan. Bro, come on. They put fucking... Wagner was pissed about Bakhmut and getting shot by Russia. Everything is cool now. I think he's just mad about Bakhmut. No, it wasn't Hasan. Bro, even if you're mad about getting fucking bombed, okay, by the Russian Air Force, even if you're getting mad about that, turning a fucking convoy around and saying you're going into the heart of Moscow and actually overtaking the Southern Military Command Center is not normal. That, you can't just act like this is something that happens all the fucking time. It does happen all the time throughout history when wars are being lost, okay? That's not a fucking normal situation at all. Come on, dude.
Of his concerns and perhaps willing to look the other way as he starts to do things like either march towards Moscow or take over, larger cities and Russian military garrisons in the country. That's not something that you just do and be willing to suffer the consequences unless you have at least some tacit support inside the Kremlin. Now, it's entirely possible that what he has decided is that, okay, now is not the time. Or it's possible that some of these folks that he's been talking to, probably not Putin, inside.
I think this is also important. The MOD made PMC sign a contract that disbands them and integrates them into the army, and Prigozhin didn't want to lose his power at the head of Wagner, so the detail everyone's missing. I think that yeah, it's more so a power struggle that it seems like it's a power struggle internally within the Russian forces between the private military leadership and also the conventional forces within the Russian military.
The Kremlin have said, wait a minute, now's not the best time. So my theory is that what he's doing is perhaps he's slowing down for now, having made a very important point to Putin, and I think having weakened Putin significantly. The Lukashenko part of this, Lukashenko's a puppet. These are table scraps for him. It's stuff that makes him look like the big man that he wants to be, and every once in a while Putin will send him something. I don't think it's incredibly important, and I don't believe that he was instrumental in reaching some sort of agreement with Prigozhin on this one.
Back now to our breaking news. The leader of the mercenary group, the Wagner group, announced that he's turning his forces away from their march towards...
This is so funny, dude. He's like, all right, we're done. He's like, we're good. Didn't they like take down a fucking Russian helicopter or some shit too in the process? All right. It's fine. Not going to Moscow. Fuck it. Pack it up, boys. We're good. Here's what OSINT Defender is saying. According to Russian state media, major changes to the leadership of the Russian Ministry of Defense, including changes to the current defense minister Sergei Shoigu and the Army Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov, have reportedly been agreed upon in order to stop the march of the Wagner PMC group towards the capital of Moscow. These negotiations have also reportedly included the assured security of the Wagner group. These negotiations are also reported to have included a stipulation that the majority of Wagner PMC forces will be redeployed out of Russia and Ukraine to Africa. Those two better not go near any windows for the next few months. No, I think he'll just fucking... Sounds like they went on strike to me. Good for them. So you were wrong about Ukraine and now about Russia? Fuck it, I'm saying it. Russia will collapse? Wait, what? No, I not say that at all. What the fuck are you talking about? It's got to be bait, right? Africa, bro, Russia's actually going to lose? No, Wagner already operates mostly in Africa and Syria. What do you mean? Guys, they're mercs. They were already predominantly operating in Africa, so he's just sending him over there. There's a lot of PMCing you can do in Africa, yeah, to combat malaria. As usual, Twitter opinions attacking you for things you didn't say, lol. Yeah. Yeah, Wagner owns gold mines all throughout Africa and does human trafficking. Fun stuff. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's a 45-minute Wagner thing by the Wall Street Journal. It's pretty good. Yeah, I don't have 45 minutes to watch that because I am going to become a samurai. Okay?
Moscow, that is Yevgeny Prigozhin, and it comes amid a deal apparently brokered by the Belarusian president Alexander Lukashenko. Joining me now is the former Russian foreign minister Andrei Kozyrev. Welcome back to our program, Andrei Kozyrev. You were foreign minister from 1990 to 96. That includes the time when Gorbachev suffered a coup. So I just want to ask you, what do you think was going on? Was Prigozhin trying to conduct a coup? What actually do you think his motivation was?
Well, it's very difficult to pass a final judgment, but I believe that it's just a traditional Kremlin's fight or Bulldogs fight under the rug, but now it came to the open because it's different time, it's time of information era, and especially in time of the war, which they cannot win, at least, if not losing. So under these circumstances, it's kind of fight on their rank and even on camera. But don't, I mean, it's deadly fight, but it's also a reality show. And these guys are all of the same kind of league, all of the same gang, rather. They are gangsters fighting for their piece of pie, and pie is becoming thinner because of the war, because of the sanctions, and the fight becomes thicker, so to say. The fight becomes more intensive.
So Andrei Kozyrev, do you include Putin in this gang as a gangster? And do you think he is strengthened or weakened by this?
Absolutely. He is probably godfather of the whole arrangement. You know...
Yeah, that was my favorite shit. That was my fucking favorite shit, was looking at Twitter and seeing like Russians just hanging out while like the Wagner boys were assuming like military positions, you know what I mean? They were like, what the fuck? Is this not working? Yo, this one sucks. Yeah, they were bringing him food and water, which I thought was odd, but also they were just like fucking chilling. There was a guy who was like cleaning the street. He's like, yeah, it's my job. I'm gonna keep doing my job. Fuck you. You know? Slav squatting at the coup. Yeah. These motherfuckers are unshakable, dude. The good old bulldog fight under the rug. They had a parade for when Wagner was leaving, casually buying vodka, giving the Wagner guys the vodka.
Oh, Prigozhin was his creature. He created Prigozhin, and he owns a Belarusian dictator who depends totally on his support because people there are against the dictator. So those are all participants in the same vaudeville, so to say, in the same drama, if you want. And yes, of course, Putin is one of those. It well might be that Prigozhin really wants to unseat Putin, but I don't believe he ever thought of that. And probably he could, even if he has an upper hand, he probably will keep Putin as a front man, as a puppet, because it's very convenient. Yes, but if he does not have the ultimate kind of upper hand, they will kind of try to find a, an agreement. They are bargaining now behind the scenes, and but it does not mean that they would not use force for this bargain.
Okay, so let me ask you a final question. When we first had you on after Putin's invasion, this latest invasion of Ukraine, you said that when Putin makes that kind of move, he has to be punched back strong in the nose. That's the only language he understands. Do you think Ukraine and its Western backers have punched Putin strongly enough in the nose?
Unfortunately not, but there is still chance and there is still necessity, especially under the circumstances when those bulldogs are now fighting almost openly. That's the right time to give Ukraine the most powerful, most modern weapons and make their offensive successful and end the war. If the West helps Ukraine to end the war fast, then it will be of much less importance what kind of, it will go on, this fight of the bulldogs there. So it's okay, let them do it in their cage, but not on Ukrainian soil.
What we know now is that Yevgeny Prigozhin has agreed to turn round his columns on the way to Moscow, and they've gone back to field camps. We've seen video of some of those Wagner fighters leaving the Rostov-on-Don city, that southern military stronghold that they took over last night and seemed to walk into, they said, without even firing a shot. They're leaving. He indeed himself was pictured in an SUV wearing a baseball cap in that city. It seems driving out and being cheered by locals. So that answers one question the Kremlin weren't able to answer themselves. Where is Yevgeny Prigozhin? He seems to be leaving Rostov. But the Kremlin also offered a very elaborate series of solutions to how today has finally come to an end. In their statements, they think Yevgeny Prigozhin is now bound for Belarus. Interestingly, Belarus's president stepped forward, and Russian state media has backed that up to suggest that he played a role as kind of an intermediary here, getting Yevgeny Prigozhin to agree to stand down at the behest of Vladimir Putin. We also know that Wagner fighters who were involved in this particular march on Moscow, as it's been termed by some, they will not face prosecution. The Kremlin saying that their bravery on the front lines has been recognized, and that those who were not involved in the march could in fact join the Russian Ministry of Defense. So an utterly bizarre, sudden 180 towards the end of today, where Yevgeny Prigozhin, by his own suggestion, was 125 miles outside of the outskirts of the capital city, unimpeded, frankly, all that way, bar some minor clashes perhaps with helicopters on that main highway, suddenly decides to change his mind, and then, according to...
The part I don't understand is why this dude is getting dapped up by not just like old people, but young people too. Like, I don't know if that's like a commonly shared sentiment or whatever. I don't know if it's like where he is in Russia and like their own political perspective or whatever. But it is odd. They are the heroes of Bakhmut, and yes, it's common because he's epic to them. Like, tired of the regime, just want other people in power, even though they're much worse. Like, I kind of don't understand it because, like, on the one hand, like, if you like Wagner, you're supposed to like them because they're fucking ruthless, right? He was a legendary caterer. Yeah, they like Prigozhin because he's so good. My adoring public, yo, it's him, the Kuhmeister. We love you, sir. Good luck in Belarus. Me, unaware that I've just been fed 50 times the lethal dose of polonium in a meatball sub. Aw, shucks. You fans are the ones who really make the Wagner PMC great. Are you ready? Or obviously not, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. As a local, I'd say it's more likely going to be younger people that would like him. Older people see him as a thug, gang leader mostly. Keep in mind, he was in jail for multiple offenses, only amnestied by fucking Gorby government. Is this the Wagner leader? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thoughts on the thing that Wagner wants more power so they can pursue the war on their own terms and be more effective in killing? I believe that. You know what I mean?
This like kind of feels like a labor movement.
I mean, it is. Kazan kaldırıyorlar. That is the real historic precedent for what they did. The Janissaries, as I told you guys before, were the most effective like Ottoman Empire military group. They were the best fighters. They were like the specialists, and they would regularly have. It wasn't a mutiny, but they would regularly have strikes. revolving around pay for the most part, or revolving around changes that were being made to the military or something like that. You know what I mean? They would strike at the top of the hour when there's a 3-minute ad break because they still haven't gotten gifted a sub by MK 34 MKD 50, who's gifted 5,000 subs at this point. If you still haven't gotten one, you're just not getting it. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna keep it $1.50 with you. Okay? But yeah.
That was gentle, but it was a good segue.
Yeah, which by the way, at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $5 or for free with Twitch Prime. So hey, Bozo, thank you for the 5 gifted. 34 MKD 50 with another 50. At this point, it's like out of control. I don't know what to say about that. Seems like it checks out to me. I think they're pro-war and just want more efficient in achieving the overall goal. They're still evil as fuck.
Hey, mercenary group is pro-war.
XVX Colin, thank you for the 20 gifted. Yes, they are a mercenary group. They are pro-war, yes. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
The Kremlin is now part of a deal where he just agrees to go into exile in Belarus and be done with it all without facing prosecution. It's an utterly baffling turn of events here. Vladimir Putin began the day angrily denouncing an armed insurrection, its blackmail, its terrorist methods, and now appears to have struck a deal with Prigozhin, who will essentially, it seems, if this is really the case, that the Kremlin's version of events will go into effect, will now be safe in Belarus. It will have an impact on Russian positions on the front lines, because Wagner have been key fighters there, certainly. But I've got to tell you, Wolf, it feels like we're missing some key facts here. It feels like we're missing something in the negotiations with Prigozhin, or something in his calculations. Did this just a long-planned effort, it seems, go too frighteningly well? Did he find himself too close to Moscow and decide to pull back? Has something else gone on that we're not aware of? It doesn't really make sense at this particular stage. What it does do, though, is embarrass the Kremlin and certainly show that Vladimir Putin is not the all-powerful man in Russia that he appeared to be more of 24 hours ago, Wolf.
It's also, as you say, utterly bizarre, and clearly Putin is vulnerable right now. Nick Payton-Walsh reporting for us. Stay with us. U.S. intelligence has been closely monitoring this situation. I want to go to our chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto. He's joining us live right now. You have some new reporting, I understand, Jim, about what U.S. intelligence actually knew leading up to these truly extraordinary and historic events.
That's right, Wolf. U.S., Western intelligence, its partners have been watching Russia, of course, very closely for some time. But in recent days, they had detected preparations. They believe that Prigozhin was making preparations and planning for a major challenge to Russian military leadership in recent days and weeks. They were surprised by the speed of his operation in the last 24 hours, but were not surprised that this challenge had taken place. They'd seen a number of preparations in the lead up to this, the massing of weapons, contacts with regular Russian army units, and then, of course, his very public statements critical of Russian military leadership and right up to Vladimir Putin in recent days and weeks as well. And they saw all those signals and saw those as preparations for some.
The Z Patriots like Prigozhin because he's hardcore and wants to do the war right. People on the opposition like him because he's creating chaos in an oscillated regime. That's interesting. I mean, it's like strange bedfellows type situation.
Serious challenge to Russian military leadership, which is what we seem to have seen play out over these tumultuous last 24 hours. I will say that during that time frame, another thing they were watching closely as Prigozhin marched his forces first to Rostov-on-Don and then further, at least towards Moscow, was how much or how many Russian regular army units would join him in that. Early on, as we were discussing earlier in the day, they noticed that many Russian units did not seem to be challenging Prigozhin's advance, though not perhaps joining him, but at least not challenging him, letting him pass by. What isn't clear is that there was a critical mass of other forces joining him in this challenge here, and that could have been an influential factor in what we've seen just in these last couple of hours there, a reversal by Prigozhin and his forces, and now seeing them leave, head back to their camps, to their bases.
Very important indeed. Our Jim Sciutto reporting for us. Thank you. CNN's Ben Wiedemann is also tracking what's going on. He's getting reaction from inside Ukraine. He's live in Zaporizhia in the war zone in Ukraine. He's joining us right now. So, Ben, what are you learning? What's the situation there?
Well, I must say, Wolf, it has been a long, strange day. This morning, when everyone here in Ukraine learned that at 7:30 a.m. local time, that Prigozhin and his men appeared to have seized some critical military facilities in southern Russia, in Rostov-on-Don, it seemed that perhaps Russia was on the brink of something huge. Ukrainian officials started talking about perhaps this is the beginning of the collapse of the Russian state, perhaps the beginning of a civil war. Even President Zelensky, in his nightly address to the nation, suggested that perhaps Vladimir Putin was on the run.
Ben Wiedemann reporting from Zaporizhia in Ukraine. Ben, thank you very much. Stay safe over there, as I say to you every day. CNN's Nick Payton Walsh is back with us. I also want to bring in retired General Wesley Clark, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, and retired Colonel Cedric Layton, both CNN
Look at these
military
fucking generals,
analysts.
dude.
General Clark, Moscow was bracing for a potential Wagner assault. There's no doubt about that. Yet now the Kremlin says they've struck a deal with Prigozhin. What's your reaction to these late-breaking developments?
I agree with what Nick said, that we don't have all the facts. There are missing facts here. Here's a couple of things that don't add up. Number one is, do we really know that there was a rocket strike on Prigozhin's troops? We don't really know that.
Lemon party reunion
video
over
of
here.
it, but we don't have any evidence of that. We do know.
Why do they both look ghoulish? What do you mean? They're fucking retired generals, man. Of course they look ghoulish. They're like, they got pure evil. Wesley Clark is an interesting guy, though. I mean, out of all American generals, he's like, he's definitely a bit of an oddball.
That tactical nuclear weapons
His
have been
politics are
supposedly moved
interesting.
into Belarus. Is it possible that this is all a sort of Maskirovka distraction to be able to redeploy the Wagner Group troops into Belarus? We don't know that. We don't really understand the essence of the deal. So there's a lot of facts here that don't make sense, but
the craziest thing is that Prigozhin said that the special military operation in Ukraine was a mistake and a cash grab for the elites, which is a big no-no to say in Russia. So it's weird because, like, he's ultra-nationalist. So what the fuck does that mean? I remember hearing about that and not fully understanding it. Like, it's not like he's anti-war. He's a fucking mercenary. I don't think he said it like that. And I think that was a mistranslation or wishful thinking by people who wanted to present him as like a possible anti-Putin, anti-war, or anti-war in Ukraine guy. He's an ultra-nationalist who's upset at the way that the war is being waged. Okay? Like, he wants to do it better. Like, he wants to be more ruthless. He wants to be more efficient. He wants to, you know what I mean? It's not like he's saying like, oh, we need to do peace, actually. I want to go back to fucking catering. He's like, why haven't you given me hammers to kill civilians with? I don't understand it. We need more hammers on the fucking front lines. It wasn't a mistranslation. I heard him say it. Yeah, I think he said like nothing special happened on the 24th of February. And it was started under bullshit pretenses, specifically not because of some tactical interests, but specifically so that Shoigu could get a second medal, and that all of Putin's MOD are basically leading him astray. They're like lying to him. Why is Hasan acting like he knows Russian more than translators? I don't. What? Who are the translators? I'm talking to chat. It still doesn't make sense, though, why he said what he said about... Dude, what is happening? Will has not responded to me. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Yeah, wake up. Wake up, samurai. We got a city to burn, you know?
It doesn't seem that Prigozhin is the kind of person who would have launched something like this, prepared for it, and then suddenly just decide, well, I don't seem to have the troop support. I think I'll just cut a deal and go into exile in Belarus. This is a man who controls Syria. He's got troops all over Africa. He's bringing in gold. He's worth a lot of money. There's a lot more here that we're not seeing yet.
I suspect you're absolutely right. Colonel Layton, we do have some new video of Prigozhin supposedly leaving Rostov-on-Don military headquarters with crowds cheering him. Does Putin still see Prigozhin as a threat as long as Prigozhin is still alive?
Well, that I think is one possibility, Wolf. That he is still a threat. I agree with General Clark. This is one of the most bizarre situations that we've dealt with in a long time. The other possibility is that this is a huge masquerade that's been staged for everybody's benefit to get them to believe that something is going on when it really isn't. And that's I think one of the possibilities. And the possibility, as General Clark mentioned, of them going into Belarus. Something that has to be considered, the possibility that they might be redeploying within Ukraine to some other area that is perhaps weaker now because of some other things. That's also possible. So there are a lot of things that could still happen. He could still be considered a threat by Putin because the language was very strong this morning in Putin's speech. But there's something that is not quite adding up here.
Jill, as you know, the Kremlin now says the criminal case against Prigozhin will be dropped. So what does all this reveal about Vladimir Putin's grasp on power right now?
Well, I still think that he is in a very weakened position after this. I mean, after all, a rebellion almost getting to Moscow, there's no question. And he's also left with this dilemma of what do you do with Prigozhin? I mean, Prigozhin is a time bomb. And they know it. So this idea that you get him out of Russia, you send him to Belarus, it sounds a little strange, but I cannot imagine that Prigozhin would continue to be in Russia because every day that he's there, he's a potential threat. I mean, what Prigozhin wants is to get rid of the leadership of the military. Does he want Putin to go? Not necessarily, but he's been very critical in effect by saying what he said, that Putin was misled by his military. So it is a very confusing situation, but I think, I was asking myself, why would they let Lukashenko do this deal? And I do think that if Putin were to negotiate directly with Prigozhin, it would put them on the same level. Putin could never do that. So he gets Lukashenko, who owes him a lot, to do the deal, but the deal still leaves all of these questions. Does Wagner disband? Where do they go? Do they go back to fight? Do they even exist? What happens to all the lucrative business that Prigozhin has from Wagner? It's really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, lots of questions still unfolding right now. General Hertling, how incredible is it that this power struggle between the Russian military on the one hand and Prigozhin and his Wagner troops spiraled this far?
Wolf, that is a great question. And what's fascinating, in all organizational militaries, you have unique personalities, some with a lot of ego. As Jill just mentioned, Prigozhin is, I would say, not just a time bomb, but he's a free-floating electron. He's all over the place. And what you're talking about with Prigozhin and Shoigu, neither one of them are professional military men. They have not grown up in the military. They're play acting in this. They have not subjugated their forces to the security of Russia. They have forces that are pledged to them. It's phenomenal. I was thinking as I was watching the film, some of which you're showing right now, the soldiers that are walking around as part of the Wagner group under Prigozhin's command, what the hell are they thinking right now? What is their mission? What's their mission set? It's certainly not to serve Russia. It's to serve this personality. And the ego is off the chart. It's narcissistic. And truthfully, there are a lot of losers from what occurred over the last 24 hours. There will be continued losers. And I believe both Putin, Shoigu, and Prigozhin are all losers in this outcome.
Dmitry, you're an expert in this whole area. What do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, the fact that Prigozhin's Wagner group, this armored column, was able to reach within about 150 miles of Moscow without the combined forces of the Russian Ministry of Defense, the Interior Forces, the intelligence services of the FSB, as well as the Rosgvardia, the National Guard, being able to stop them is truly remarkable and indicates how weak the whole system has become. I mean, this is almost, they've reached as far as Hitler did in 1941, right on the outskirts of Moscow. Truly remarkable. And even after Putin had declared that these traitors have to be crushed, the Russian military still was unable to stop them.
You think he should, Prigozhin, Dmitry, should fear for his life right now?
Yeah. I mean, $34 MKD, thank you for the 50 gifted, by the way. CNN is so horny about Wagner war criminals. I mean, this is like content. It's interesting. It fucks up Russia's bag. I get why there's a lot of intrigue on a story like this. It's like a win-win-win, you know? It's odd. It's an odd situation. Totally get why people are fucking lasered in on this, especially with the way that it ended. I just don't fucking know. I don't understand it. I still don't understand it. I read a lot on it. I watched so much on it. And yet I still cannot fully grasp why it happened and how it unfolded in the way that it did and how it ended.
I think it's too early to say. This deal may very well hold. And in fact, the right way to think about the Russian system in general is, for those of you who like the Godfather movie, it's as if the Barzini crime family negotiated a deal between Vito Corleone and the other rival family. These are essentially mafia figures. And sometimes in these mafia gangland shootouts, what's known in Russian as razborki, sometimes you have deaths of leaders. Sometimes you have sit-downs that result in peace. It may not be durable peace, but sometimes they agree to move on.
Your team might be mad that I'm putting you on.
Love these analogies. Oh, Hasan Minhaj talked to Bardock, no bummer, but obviously I don't got fucking 30 minutes to do that. But I do wanna give a quick shout out to our big boy, our love. That's right, Donald Trump.
But the Presidential Records Act, which is not even mentioned in this ridiculous 44-page indictment of me. I didn't know about that. You know, when I graduated from the Wharton School of Finance, we didn't study being indicted, getting arrested, going to jail. We didn't know about that. They never taught us that.
I did everything right and they indicted me. He's right. Yeah. You see this clip from the Asian
Show
last
us
night?
child pornography. Show us child pornography.
What the fuck? That's actually pretty funny. The only time where that is allowed. The only time where you can say that catchphrase, feeling bad for anyone who listens out loud. Yeah. Howie Mandel is my OCD brother. Bro, they showed a whole ass prolapsed anus video at the HG Live show. Someone threw up in the crowd. No. Here's another Trump clip. Will you be streaming your Samurai Training? Yes.
Records Act, which is civil, not criminal. It's done in 1977, civil. I had every right to have these documents.